A lot of the risks of the Earth2 platform have been highlighted recently, but a video posted yesterday by the Earth2 YouTube channel actually brought some concerns to mind that I hadn't previously considered. So stick around while I talk about two of the biggest issues I think could prevent Earth2 from experiencing immediate short-term success. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Bull Combo. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And yes, today we're going to be discussing two concerns I have with the Earth2 platform that could affect the immediate short-term success and in turn affect the long-term success of the platform. But before we get started, if you guys like metaverse conversations, if you like virtual land conversations, or you like checking out some of the new blockchain games and concepts and platforms coming out, I definitely recommend subscribing to the channel. And if you like this video, hit that like button, guys. It goes a long way. The YouTube algorithm really likes it when you guys engage on these videos. So if you find some value here, consider doing that. Also, a quick reminder, guys, that the NFT giveaway is still going. Winners are going to be picked on Friday. If you haven't already entered, make sure to watch the weekly update video I posted last Friday. It has all the entry steps that you need in order to get entered for the giveaway. And on Friday, I'll be selecting a couple winners to receive some of the NFT Earth2 cards that were recently minted. So it's no secret there's been a series of videos released kind of highlighting the fact that the Earth2 platform has a lot of risk involved in it, and I don't think there's any arguing that. In fact, I had a conversation with one of the original video creators last week by the name of Josh Strife Hayes. And he asked me some really great questions. I think we had a really productive conversation talking about some of the things he misunderstood about the Earth2 platform, as well as kind of clarifying our opinions on where we think it could go and things like that. So I really respected that conversation. I really respected the follow-up video that he posted. So he was able to clarify some of his misunderstandings from his first video, while also reinforcing his stance on some of the risks he thinks are very real with the platform. Mainly that it's a closed system where your money is kind of stuck in this system until someone comes in and buys your asset. He also highlighted some of the fees that are involved in the transactions on the platform that can make it so a user is automatically operating at a loss when they enter the system. And a few of those things are very true, you know, and while the platform or the economic system underneath it isn't unique to Earth2, there's inherent risks involved with that. So I think we can all agree that there's risks involved. I think we can all agree that the risks have been well covered, but I think we can also all agree that if the Earth2 team is to come out with something tangible and playable, there's a very real chance that it could push the platform forward into that success that it needs to carry it to the later phases. So today's video is going to be focusing on two concerns I had specifically regarding the short-term development of the platform and how I think these two issues could spell trouble if they aren't addressed and the Earth2 team doesn't work on a way to tackle these. So let's dive right in. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was understanding your audience. Now, understanding your audience can mean a few different things. First and foremost, it means tailoring your message or tailoring the way you communicate something to be best received by the recipient or by the audience. So that's obviously important in and of itself. But another thing that you also need to do is you need to just be able to read your audience. And that means having your finger on the pulse of the community. And sometimes that means knowing what your community wants to see, even when they aren't sure what they exactly want to see. And this is one of those projects where everyone has a different set of expectations, so everyone wants to see something different. And I think by releasing these phase 3 videos that are just hints or breadcrumbs of what's going to be coming years down the line, I don't think it's really doing us any favors. I think they should start focusing on more of phase 2, because let's be real, guys, phase 3, again, is not going to be here for years, which means we're going to be spending a lot of time in phase 2. And I think releasing more information on phase 2, maybe a teaser trailer showing what's going to be available in phase 2 or some of the cooler features that are going to be available, would really go a long way to both establishing that there's a game that's going to be playable, but also establishing that they are taking this in a phased approach and that there is something playable and tangible coming in the near future far before phase 3 ever releases. Because again, I think people are far too focused on whether or not they can do Ready Player One right now, and I think the reality is we know they can't. And they're trying to prove that they have enough knowledge to do it long term, but I don't think we should be asking for that. I think we should be asking to see what we're going to be doing next. Because I think that's really what we all want to know. We all want to know what's happening next. What is phase 2 going to look like? I know we've heard about Essence, we've heard about EPLs, we've heard about resources, but while those are great features, if we're stuck on a tile view like this for another 2-3 years until phase 3 comes out, I think the player base is going to lose a lot of interest in this platform, and that could spell disaster before it ever reaches the point of phase 3. So I think that the team would benefit themselves, and it would benefit the user base for them to release some previews of Phase 2 functionality. Now again, we know they're restructuring Essence. That's not a secret, we know that. And we know that Phase 2 is based on Essence. But from the sounds of it, Essence is very much a back-end or underlying feature within Phase 2. I don't believe that the user interface is going to be called Essence and that we're going to be looking at Essence this, Essence that. It's probably going to be built into the underlying architecture of the platform and of the game. So there has to be other game features. There has to be things that we haven't seen or that they haven't talked about yet. And I think that that's really what I want to see. And it sort of concerns me that they haven't showed us that yet, because part of me wonders if we're going to have more functionality available in Phase 2 or not. And obviously I know this is a bit of a premature concern because there's been nothing officially said to lead us to believe otherwise. But because there's been a lack of content related to the next phase, the most recent upcoming thing, I think that that should be concerning. And I think more people should be asking this question, not when's Phase 2, but what does Phase 2 look like? Because I'm fine waiting for Phase 2 if I know it's going to be available in 3 months and it's going to look cool. But not even knowing what we're waiting on, I think, is part of the frustration that's feeding the underlying community and it's feeding the angst and impatience that's kind of spread throughout the community a little bit right now. Now, obviously, everyone as a whole still supports the platform, still supports the dev team, etc. But I think it would go a long way if they could give us a little bit more information on exactly what we're going to see in this next phase of the game. Otherwise, we risk losing interest within the player base. And that leads me to my next point. And that is that time is not on Earth 2's side right now. Now, I understand being patient. I understand having empathy. I really like the dev team. Every interaction I've had with the dev team so far has been mainly positive. And at this point, I think I'm pretty confident that the dev team's working on something. Whether or not they'll be able to accomplish the Ready Player One comparison or the Matrix comparison they've made, I don't know. But I think most of us that have been involved in the platform this long and had conversations with the devs know that they're all spending their time working on something. But just because we like them as people, just because we think they're nice people, and just because we think they're working on something, doesn't mean it's going to be successful. And yes, the platform has only been around for 7 months, but the team has spoken multiple times about how they've been planning this for longer, for years, and I really do think that we are hitting a point now where every week, every month that something doesn't progress in the platform is an exponentially larger gap between Earth 2 and the competitors. And part of what brought this thought onto me was my recent exposure to other metaverse platforms like the Sandbox and seeing how far along the Sandbox was already. Granted, they started several years before, but seeing where their platform was, seeing how great their roadmap is, their communication level, their community engagement, and the amount of functionality and features they've released to their community, even from a very early point. And it just sort of highlights the gap between Earth 2 and some of their competitors, some of the other people inside the space. Now, obviously, Earth 2 and the Sandbox are similar in concept, but very different in execution and very different in their overall grand schemes and grand goals. So it's not realistic to expect Earth 2 to have the level of progress that the Sandbox has. But at the same time, it does really highlight the huge gap in progress between the two platforms. And while I've said many times that I do think multiple metaverses will exist, and we've seen this stated by many people, including the CEO of Epic in a recent interview regarding metaverses, there's only going to be room for so many. And my concern is that the market is going to be completely saturated with far more advanced, far more developed applications like this before Earth 2 ever gets its feet fully off the ground. And we could run into a situation where there's just not room for any more by the time this happens. And the comparison I think back to is Google+. Now, obviously, Google+ wasn't a metaverse, but Google's an extremely established brand. And when Google+ was launched, Google was already very large. And they were obviously taking on Facebook directly from a social media competitor perspective. And I thought it was very interesting to see that even though Google had all this capital, all these resources, all these devs, all of these graphics, all of this fancy looking stuff, they still were not able to compete with Facebook. And it was mostly because Facebook was just there first. They had already gotten it done first. And even though Google Plus looked nicer in some ways and had some features that Facebook didn't, people were very loyal, and that kind of highlighted brand loyalty. And I think that circles back to this conversation, because if we see too many companies enter the space, and we already know there's dozens of virtual land and metaverse platforms currently in production right now, there's only going to be room for so many. I mean, if you look at like the phone companies in the United States, how many phone companies are there really? How many phone companies do you know that your friends use? Maybe 5 to 10 max. I mean, you have the big ones like Verizon, AT&T, and then Sprint T-Mobile, but after that it kind of gets pretty murky. I mean, you have Google phone service. I know some cable providers like Spectrum offer phone service now, but those are really the second tier, you know what I mean? And then you have prepaids like TracFone, etc., but the list is short, guys. And after those top three, how many people do you know that use those other options? Very few. It's not like they're these massive user base. There's enough to keep the company afloat, but not enough to push it to that next level. And that's kind of the thing that I get concerned about here, is that if the Earth2 team doesn't work on accelerating their timeline and mass hiring and really pushing things as quickly as possible, they could very well get left in the dust very quickly. And even if they do accomplish their end goal, it might not mean anything because so many other companies had already been established for so long, they kind of gobbled up that space and there's really no room for competition anymore. So I really do think that time is not on the Earth2 team side. Time is of the essence, no pun intended. But I really hope that the Earth2 team understands this and that they have a lot more planned in the background that we really just haven't seen. And that this lack of updates, this lack of communication, the lack of previews of Phase 2 and stuff like that is really just a byproduct of the team working to get everything in the underlying architecture and the underlying infrastructure up to snuff so that it can handle that level of growth and it can really handle that level of scaling once they kick that scaling into high gear. But I just wanted to highlight these two concerns because I think that they're two things, especially the communication aspect and the Phase 2 aspect. I think they're two things that haven't really been focused on by the community. I'm not seeing the community mentioned very often, and I think that they're very important points to discuss and talk about. So guys, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that the Earth2 team needs to really work on their communication? Do you think we need to see more from Phase 2? And do you really think this is a make or break time for the Earth2 team? I know that's a few different questions, so feel free to answer what you want down below, but I really like hearing your opinions on this stuff. I like to hear what the community thinks. I like to keep my finger on the pulse of the community, and I think that that's something the Earth2 team should be doing too, so I want to really hear your thoughts on this. Other than that, guys, I want to thank you for checking out this video. As always, I appreciate the support. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, we'll see you soon.